So hello everyone, it's Colette from the Sacred Rose Temple, and I'm doing this recording to speak to you on the subject of connection, of the divine, of God, of universe, whatever it is that we want to call it. So for me on my spiritual path, and for many of the people and clients that I work with, it's a really big deal for me to be working with the energy of the beloved, of God. And that brings up quite a big kind of, wound or feeling or hurt for somebody. And that happened to me on my journey to find myself in realization with God. And what I like to talk about and to get to first is the understanding that we're talking about connection here. We're talking about a deep inward feeling that we get to when we start to enter a more contemplative state as a person. So we find ourselves where we're beginning to question why we are here, what our purpose is, why life has certain meaning to it. These are the deeper questions that take us to an inner space. Why our lives are going a certain way, why we keep ending up in the same patterns or in the same structures, or not being able to get out of certain, patterns in our lives. So we start to take a deeper inquiry inward, and when we start to be contemplative, when we start to be still, we start to question, we start to enter into our inner landscape, there's this feeling of wanting depth. We want to go deeper. We're feeling something in us that is not answerable. Many of the mystics, many of the sages, many of those who have been enlightened, and there are not many, speak about this as the mystery. There is a deeper mystery that is really not known to us. And we begin to enter the mystery on an awakening path, or any, whatever you want to call it, whether you call it soul path, awakening, spiritual, it's a label. But we come to a point where we start to question this deeper space inside of us, this inner space, and where that inner space is connected to. So when I started in my journey, I would often talk about this connection as feeling connected to the universe. That's what it felt like. It felt like very cosmic, very spiritual. It felt like it was a world that included angels and spirits and all that couldn't be seen by the eye. And that was my first connection with this inner space. I then went into, obviously, the yogic path, which followed the worship of deities, say, Ganesh and Shiva and all of those deities that we recognize within the yoga world. And there was connection there for me. I could feel this. I could feel this wanting to devote to something, and to something that had a greater power than me, something that had a power that was not of this earth. And I think that's why I used to call it, when we connect to universe. I also, on a path of shamanism and doing shamanistic studies and working with the shamans, that the shaman energy really helped me connect to Gaia, to the earth. And that was another deity, another part, another aspect of devotion for me. So I could devote myself to the power of earth, water, air, and fire, and all those energies that this planet is made of, and Mother Gaia and Pachamama, and all those things connected to earth. And so that became part of my path. I did some deep worship of the earth plane, deep devotion and prayer to the earth plane, to Mother Gaia, and for providing me with, resources such as shelter and food. And so as I went deeper on the path, the worship of Gaia and the worship of deities took me to Christian mysticism, and I began to get deep connection with the likes of Mother Mary. Her story really resonated with me, not in a religious way at all, but in a mystical way. Who was this woman? And this woman was somebody I'd never met at this point, although my experience of Mary had been met as a child when I went to Sunday school. I was from a multi-faith family who were christened different religions to try and harmonise the imbalance of religious war. So I was christened a Presbyterian, and my brother Church of England, my other brother Protestant, and my sister Catholic. So we were an interfaith family. And I chose to go Sunday school because it was something I really enjoyed doing. I love the connection at Sunday school. I didn't like the fear-based teaching, and I didn't like the, some of the stricter natures of what was being taught, but there was something there that I couldn't quite put my hand on as a child. And as I grew up, I began to kind of move away at all from any Christian teachings or any religious teachings, and seemed to be very anti-religious. I didn't want to enter into religion. In fact, the Eastern methodology appealed to me more, the deities, the elephant gods and the monkey gods. They resonated with me on a much deeper level. And so the path grew and grew, and like I said, I ended up being very connected to Mother Mary, and working with a teacher of Christian mysticism. This inquiry grew all deeper, and I began to really feel her and her story and meditate upon her and pray the rosary, the Gnostic rosary rather than the Catholic rosary. And I began to read books about her. I read the Nag Hammadi and many texts connected to Mother Mary, until I started to feel some kind of personal relationship with her. And I felt deep down that my connection to Mary was due to the fact that this was an everyday normal woman, not the woman that the church told me that was superhuman and, this was special woman. Mary appealed to me later on in my life because she was a mother, because her life was full of hardship, because there was sacrifice like many of us face in our own lives, and because of the strength that I felt through the devotional aspect of Mary. For me, Mary conjured up an image of a woman who devoted herself wholeheartedly to what she believed in. And it was actually through my connection to Mary energy, or Mary spirit, whatever we want to call it, that I began to really be led into a path of God. So Mary, I feel, in her energy within the realms, within our world at the moment, and I believe that Mary was an enlightened woman, a woman who went through enlightenment and became at one with God, and was able to work within the multidimensional planes now to help mankind. And I do believe that that's her role, and that's what she does. She works within the human planes, and she helps and supports and encourages and guides and supports us as her children. And so, there were many instances where I felt Mary very deeply, and Mary led me to study and to also connect with the different Christed women, such as Mary Magdalene and Saint Sarah. So Mary took me on a path, I believe, to God. And the three Marys, each one of them I met spiritually on pilgrimages to the south of France. Through France, I worked with teachers and went to retreats, to go to sacred sites and to go to festivals and to places of burial and to consecrated places where the Marys have done their work on this earth. And that led me deeper and deeper and deeper into a Christian mystical path. And I've started to produce work that allowed other people to experience Mary to the depths that I had. So I produced a 21-day practice that allowed connection to Mother Mary and the Black Madonna, and I've done Mary Magdalene courses, and I've written Saint Sarah courses. And each of these courses, whilst writing them, really activated more and more about what religion had taken away from me when I was younger. And this is very personal, because religion leads people to God too. For me and for other people that I work with within the Sacred Rose Temple, my clients and my courses, I find that whenever we speak about the word God, it brings up huge trauma. It brings up defense. It brings up rebellion. And many people that I work with have a deep refusal to say the word God. They will say universe, creator, all of those words, but they really do not feel to call the word God. I'm not fixated on the word God. I'm quite happy to use any of the names of God. We know there are hundreds of names for God, and each one has a certain resonance. But for me, I feel there's something really deep with that word God. When I say God, it invokes a feeling within me, and it's not always brilliant and pure and wonderful. Still, there are resonance in me of the old religious system that was imprinted upon me, which I rebel against. So the word God itself has huge resonance, huge mantra. If you know about mantra, what mantra does to the body, the word God is the same. It creates a resonance through the body. The word Allah creates deep resonance for me through my body. And so the name of God is many. There are many names for God, and the many religions will offer different names, each all having a different resonance. So I explain this in my groups and go over the ground that there will be wounding, there will be pain attached to that word God. And that's what I want to discuss in the video now, is what connotations does that word have for you? Have you thought about why you may be repelled by God, or maybe why you're drawn to that word? So many of us have had some religious experience, maybe an anti-religious experience. Maybe we've seen religion through the lens of war. For me, that's a big thing. I realise that there's much war in the fight of who is the right religion, which has the right teaching, and there seems to be no correlation between everyone saying, oh, hang on a minute, we're all kind of connecting to God, to one God, or Allah, or whatever name you want to give it. It's the mystery. It's the one thing that all religions lead you to. But the thing about religion, it really has woundings for me with its dogmas, with its rules, with its twisting energies that have been man-made and constructed through man. And as time evolves, religions evolve through man's own hands rather than God's hands. And yeah, and that's that big wounding for me with war. There are wars between religions, and if God is anywhere in sight, there is no war. So that makes me question that connectedness. There is also huge issues around fear when we talk about God. So the God feared is spoken about, and the fear energy, as we all know on a spiritual path, is actually in polarity to love. So fear and love are at polarity. So mixing the word fear mixed with the word God is actually paradoxical. It doesn't mix. God does not invoke fear whatsoever. Fear, again, is a human attribute. And this is also coincides with the concept of sin, feeling that we're sinful. And that word sinful has been used in religion to separate people within religions and outside of religions, when we know God, that God is not about separation. God is about unification and love. So whenever I see separation, I know that there's no God involvement. God would never judge a person because of colour or sexual orientation or their gender or where they're born or where they come from. It's not relevant in the energy of love and of God. God is about bringing everyone together. And what we deem as sinful is often to do with our own wounds, our own soul wounds. And if anyone has read the Nag Hammadi, which, by the way, is the original biblical text, it was all of Jesus's teachings that were hidden in Egypt and found in Nag Hammadi in Egypt in, I think it was 1945, and translated by scholars. It teaches anything but sin and fear, and teaches compassion and love and unification, and all about the soul's wounds. It talks about how we as human beings are suffering, how we're afflicted with certain karmas and certain things that we're here to heal, So all of this inquiry of mine into the many religions, and I've done courses in Sufism, I've spoken to friends who are Muslim, and I've looked at the Quran and talked about Islam and Christian and Catholicism and, Jehovah. And none of it is a bad thing, because for me, it brings devotion and it brings connection to God. Anything that brings connection to God should be celebrated. And the only thing that I question is the dogma and is the man-madeness of it, because I believe there's a lot of man-made influence upon those religions. But I don't want to go too deeply into religion, and respect those that choose religion to the path of God, because that's their choice, that's their route to God in this life. So it's about having a mutual respect for each other and how we've stumbled, found, delved into our God connection. So finding God within, coming into God realization, was a long journey for me, and I don't regret anything. I know that the path is exactly how it's supposed to be, but I wished I was younger with the connection to God that I have now. I know that having a belief system really helps human psyche, helps the human mind. It really helps us anchor into a force and a trust and a surrender. When people become very disconnected from this inner plane, and God's in here, not above in the sky, not the man God that I was taught at church, but something that lies within me and in a deeper, bigger mystery than I could ever begin to explain or even know at this point on my journey. I know that finding the God within has allowed me to anchor into a place inside myself that is deeply aware that there's always a bigger agenda to what's happening in my life. It allows me, when times are difficult, to have a source to pray to say prayers to ask for help, to ask for guidance, to devote to. And I can't imagine my life now without the devotion to God. I can't imagine what my life would feel like if I didn't have this deep faith. God realization has stopped many in-betweens, as I call them, in my life. So working in the new age out there is a lot of modalities that goes to other sources. And I don't want to go into any debate here over certain healing modalities. But for me, working with anything that doesn't anchor into the direct energy of God is an unknown entity. There are many people practicing certain energies that have certain names. I'm going to name one, Reiki. And where is that coming from? Where does that come from? What energies is that coming through? How does that pass through your body? What state is your body in? What state is your soul in? What are your wounds? What are your behaviors? And then to pass that through your body to somebody else, that worries me. And this is something I was all into, until I realised that the only source of connection is those that directly connect with God. That's the ultimate healing source. That's the ultimate, excuse me, light energy. So this is the strongest power for me. And so when I am working within my groups, I don't consult any spirits or guardians or beings other than the divine energy that's available to us. This is the highest resonating energy, divine love. And the frequency of that can be felt. It really can be felt. You can really feel and see and acknowledge somebody when they are in this God energy, because it emanates from them. It surrounds their auric field. Their aura is surrounded in the energy of God, and they hold this key piece that's about unification, not about separation. They show an awareness of the true state. They're not fluffing and fancying up their life story, pretending to be a goddess or a healed being. They are very raw, very real, very human, and are aware of the divine pecking order that we're all in on earth, and not professing to be Mary Magdalene, or not professing to be a reborn version of Christ. So this is why I wanted to share this video, to really bring up the challenges and for you to ask yourself what disconnects you from God, what disconnects you from any of the words that are the names of God. For example, Allah. When I say Allah to people, they may have a diversion to the Islamic teachings, or if I say Jehovah, it may bring up the feeling of disconnection from Jehovah Witness. And so there's many words that may trigger for you. So I did a practice with a teacher where I chanted 108 names of God over 40 days, and allowed the resonance of each of those names to invoke or to trigger whatever it was that was triggered in me. And that was really insightful for me, and allowed me to see the places that I was in separation, I wasn't in unification, the places where I still judge, the places where I hold a certain story. I can't say Allah because it belongs to the Muslim faith, and that is not true. The word Allah is God. It's the word that faith uses to talk of God. So I like to take all of those names back and recognize that there is one God with many names. And so we can choose whichever name resonates for us, and recognize what disturbs us in the other names. And there are many things on the internet if you want to look up the names of God, that share the names of God. And I did some invoking of some of the mantras from the other faiths to feel the resonance through my body and to feel what the connection was like for me. So my two favourite words for connecting to God is God and the beloved. I love to say the beloved because it invokes that great mystery that God is, and the love that God is, beloved. So feel, after you've watched this video, the words that you like to use for God, and don't just look at it as a word, but feel the power of the words. Our words have so much power. If only everybody knew the resonance of words. And words are spells, they create spells. So when you use the word beloved, when I say the word beloved, and I've heard amazing teachers like Andrew Harvey use that word, like Rumi speak of the beloved, it brings up a passion and a feeling and a deep sense of connection within my body, and that's why I like to use it. So the beloved, I have a book called The Goddess Circle that I wrote a few years ago, and the Goddess Circle is a practice, a book of practices that take you to your inner goddess, not a goddess as in, you know, one that walks around with a holy crown on, but the inner God in you as a woman. And on day 21, I talk about this. What is the beloved? What are your aversions to certain words? And there's a practice in this that asks you to say the word out loud and to say it out until all the shame, all the rejections, all the projections are moved from the body, and to find the word that you love and come into a divine prayer space and chant that name 108 times. So I can say God, God, or the beloved, the beloved. And you can probably see even my facial expressions change when I chant certain words. So Allah for me is powerful. It's a powerful word. So I will use these in different contexts depending on how I feel, depending on what I'm teaching. So yeah, this practice of sharing the words of beloved, or the word that you choose 108 times, and going over that word. I love to pray. Every single day I pray, and I'll pray many times. I have come to the point that I like my dialogue through the day to be an open prayer. Like I will talk a lot to God during the day for certain things that come up. I like to pray a lot in the day when I feel that somebody is suffering, or I see a post that somebody's put and they're in suffering. I'll pray for them. Yesterday I drove through the village in France to go to get my shopping, and I prayed as I went through the village to all the people. God, keep these people safe. God, may they be protected from what's happening in this world. God, may they all and their families be well. And I did that for the whole car journey. And the invocation of prayer is very, very powerful. To pray, to create this kind of portal for the divine to come through, is what this world really needs. The times that we are facing at the moment was always documented. And one of the main reasons for this time being documented, it was called the descent, the darkness, the Kali Yuga, is because people would be at this time in our world most disconnected from spirit, from divine, from God. And I really believe that to be true. So I want to do my own part in bringing divinity and bringing God, and there's a lot of you out there that are doing the same, into everyday life. So I've brought my communion with God into my everyday life, and I pray avidly every day. I have moved away from praying and asking for things, because I realized at one point in my life that's all I did, is I asked God, please can you give me this job, please can you change this for me. And all that power lies within me, not within God. And So now I use my connection to God to more or less just voice, to speak, to help others, to say, give me strength. God, allow me to feel this. Please show me what this is trying to do to me, rather than using God to rescue me or to give me the things I need. I don't pray like that anymore. I'm also aware that whatever's happening to me is part of a divine design, a divine plan. So I'm giving gratitude for God. Thank you, God, for this lesson, but please help me. I'm not working it out. I don't know how to move this piece. What should I do next? Please, please show me. And so I will pray in that way too. I recently heard a story from one of my teachers called Carolyn Mace, who was speaking about the potency of prayer. She writes beautiful books on prayer. And she spoke about a story that really resonated with me, and I want to share that with you. She had been on a conference and was in the car with the conference leader returning back to the airport. And the woman who was driving the car spoke about the fact that she loved Caroline's work, and she had really got a lot from the conference, and she was God connected, and she used prayer a lot. And Caroline said, well, that's really lovely to hear. And the woman began to tell her a story. It was a story of how she nearly died. And she told Caroline that she was in a horrific car accident and dying basically in the front of her car. And she had an out-of-body experience. She found herself floating outside of her body to the cars behind her. And she could hear the conversations of people in the cars, people moaning, oh no, not another traffic accident, I'm going to be late for work. A woman said, oh, another, just the general disconnected discourse you could imagine when somebody has a car crash. There were people saying, oh no, I hope that person's okay. But there was one car where a woman was praying, and she said that outside of her body she could see this divine light pouring down on this car as this woman prayed for the woman, which was her, who'd had the accident. And she was able, as she floated above the car, to identify the number plate on the car. She said, I need to know that number plate. And she remembered the number plate. She came back in her body, was escorted to the hospital with horrific injuries that took her many, many months to overcome, and a near fatal accident. And the first thing she did when she recovered from this horrific accident was find the owner of that car. And she wrote the registration down, and she located that woman and sent her a huge bouquet of flowers and said, thank you for the prayers. And it was true. The woman had prayed for her. So, touches me still. The power of prayer is something that is not tangible for us. We cannot see it. And therefore, we often pray and may feel that it falls on deaf ears. But that isn't the truth about prayer. Prayer is never unanswered. Never. So when we pray, we are always heard, we are always met. The problem is we think that we get the delivery, the answer to that prayer in a way that we want it, and that's not true. We get an answer to a prayer in the way that we need it. We may ask God, please, please help me overcome this sickness, and that might not be the best in your interests to just have a miracle and it be overcome. You may need to learn the lessons that illness is bringing you. God, please don't let me meet another man that is like that, and yet another man that's like that comes. That prayer is being there. Well, I'm going to show you how you build the strength not to put up with behaviour like that. It's never answered in a, I'm going to put a sticky plaster over this situation. Yeah, okay, I'm just going to create a miracle and that's going to be over for you. Because life doesn't work like that. God, we can pray to God to stop war, but God doesn't create war, human beings do. We can pray to God for the victims of war. We can pray to God to say, please stop human beings acting in this way. So prayer in a God-connected place needs to be thought out. What are you praying for? What are you asking for? Are you asking for a miracle? Are you asking for support? And I find that that has really changed my receipt of prayer. When I pray, I have no expectations because I know it will be delivered to me in the way that it needs to be. I will often pray and ask for signs, and I will always get those signs. Always, please God, show me where I'm going wrong. And something will show itself. Please God, show me in the animal world tomorrow where it is in my life that I need to change. God is so mysterious and so mystical that there's also like high humor, and I call them cosmic jokes that are played upon us when you start to see the clues and the signs and dot the pieces together, because you really need an open mind to see how your prayers are being answered. I wanted to share this because this helps me a lot as a person, and when I work with other people that have lost connection and lost their faith, when I can work with them to bring them back to this connection. And that's my ultimate goal in all my work, is that I let people find this within themselves. I lead them, I show them, I poke the places that's closed to this connection. And it helps with mental health, it helps with knowing your purpose in the world, it helps with knowing how to interact with other people, it helps with when times are hard and difficult like they are now. God, give me faith, let me go through this time. God, let me pray for the people who are losing loved ones. And the more you pray, the stronger your prayers will get, and the more that you will realize that there's something in this praying thing that people speak about. So I ask you all to try to pray every day, every single day. Do it before you go to bed. Do it when you wake up in the morning. Do it in the car. God doesn't care when you're praying. And there are many prayer books out there. My partner, he runs a group called Sacred Order of the Masculine, and he does a daily prayer. He will post a daily prayer, multi-faith prayers, and they're very beautiful. They're really helpful if you don't know where to start. I find that I have a lot of teachers that have great prayers that I use. A book that I really love that I wanted to share with you is called A Gnostic Prayer Book, and it's a little tiny book. And Gnosticism, for those that don't know, is the reference to finding God within, finding faith within, finding your way back to love within, not through any dogma, but through them all, much as I've spoke about on the in the rest of this video. And this little book contains prayers of Mary, it contains the Gayatri mantra, the Hindu mantra, it contains the Apostles' Creed, Jehovah God, praying for death, invocations of the Divine Mother, the Key of Solomon. It has all the elemental prayers in. So I really, really adore this little book, and it keeps me connected to different energies of prayer. So finding any little books that might help you along the way. But my favourite prayer is just to come into a spontaneous and natural prayer. I think last night I came into a dialogue with God where I was just having a conversation, a general conversation about the times we're in and about what I'm faced with in this time. And we're all having difficulties financially, emotionally, what we do when we come out of this and how our life's changed. And I just went into a dialogue with God about that all, I kind of sounding off, telling God how I was missing my family and when I would see my parents again, and how this was a time of great unknown for us all, and to show me what I need to do daily. And that really, really allowed me to wake up this morning feeling very connected and very ready to share this video. So I hope that this has just let a spark light up in your body, in your being, as to what your connection to God is, what's the word you like to use, what's your connection to prayer, and whether you can strengthen your connection to prayer and to the divine in your life. My world is a world which I have wanted the sacred and the spiritual and the God to be all around me in the environment I live in on my land. I have grottos to the Mary, to the Black Madonna, because I like to feel that I am in devotional space, because it allows me to just feel and live differently. So I pray for you all, and I ask my beloved God to bring you all a deeper connection to her and to him within you, so that you find great respite and that you find the ultimate that we're all looking for, and that's divine love, the divinity of God's love. So bye for now, and I will see you all very soon.